welcome everyone to L&D Tricks and Treats with our friend Russell Johnson. I am Andrea Dotling, sometimes Andrea Dotling Diaz, depending on whether I feel like writing my whole name out. I'm one of the co-headless honchos of IDLance, and here we have Dr. Parker Grant, who is the other co-headless honcho, and as I mentioned, Russell Johnson, the Dark Lord of AR. So today,
as I'm commonly known in North Texas. Yes, it's true.
Yep. Yeah, it's on your business cards, I think, when we met. I think that's what I saw. So I'll let I think we all know Parker, but Parker, do you want to say a sentence about yourself? Fun fact, fun Halloween fact.
Oh, yeah, this is my lost loved one, Gary Ann. She's hanging out. So
Yeah, that sounds great.
anyway,
Yeah, so
it's
Russell
decision.
Johnson, you are here with us today, and you are the co-founder of AI for Creatives, which is a consultancy. No, the AI, wait, no, you're a co-founder of AI for Creatives, right? This was written weird.
It is an AI consultancy for innovatives that we call Innovative Babble.
Yes, Innovative Babble. I was getting there, but you're also a video editor, and you're also one of our best friends, basically, because there's nothing like the ultimate bonding experience, like hanging out with Elvis at a conference. We were at Training 2024. We shared a booth, and we hired an Elvis impersonator who was lovely. So throughout this event, just know that you can drop a question in the chat, and we have a way to get the question to us. So don't keep anything to yourself, ask us questions. But before we get started, I would like to ask Parker, have you ever seen a ghost?
No, I haven't. Still waiting. Oh, actually, I have in a different format, and everybody will learn later today.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did.
Nice segue.
Right. And Russell, what's your favorite Halloween candy?
Oh, sweet tarts, no question. Full stop.
Ooh, I don't know if we're best friends anymore, but let's move on.
It's my childhood obsession. Sorry.
All right, Parker, you want to take the next part?
Yeah. Thanks for the intro, Andrea, and welcome, Russell. It's good to have you here, and to all the viewers out there in the LinkedIn Live event. We just are hosting this for you all because a lot of people have questions about what augmented reality is, or AR. What is it? And we want to use this session to help demystify it a little bit. Sometimes AR can be a good strategy to use in your L&D department. And it's not far off, it's not futuristic, it's happening today. So we're here to kind of give you some insights as to what the technology is. And with the end of the year approaching fast, it's a good time to learn about the AR technology and put some thought into maybe this is something we can integrate in the training program that we deliver. So without further ado, I'd like to get started with Russell. And I'd love to ask Russell a question. Now, Russell's been working in this XR space for quite a long time. But what I'd like to ask you, Russ, is, can you give like a high-level overview of what AR is? And let's just assume there are people in our audience that are newbies in this. So let's just take it in that layman terms. So what is AR?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks again for having me, y'all. It's awesome. I always love doing stuff with IDLance. You do great work and manage to keep it fun, which I very much appreciate. So high level. I mean, as you've said, AR means augmented reality, and a lot of times it's defined in terms of the ways it's different from, say, virtual reality. So let's say we'll start there. Whereas virtual reality is something that is completely immersive, like you're wearing a head-mounted display, you're in a completely realized world, either through using immersive video or completely 3D environments, kind of like you might in a game in the Meta Quest. Augmented reality is kind of the opposite. It's taking digital information and laying it over the real world. So, you're able to kind of see your space. You're not completely blocked off from the rest of the world, but you're getting either additional contextual information or visuals laid over your real space. And I'm going to try not to be too nerdy and techy. It's hard for me because I'm very excited by all of this stuff. I love talking about it. The way that is accomplished right now in a lot of AR, or also what they call mixed reality experiences, your device, your head-mounted display or whatever you're using is creating that effect using what they call pass-through. So it's basically cameras on your device seeing the world and then like giving you a feedback of that world and laying the digital information over that feed. But what the real hope is, and I think what the future of AR is eventually laying that digital information over the real world using something like a very sophisticated version of a regular pair of glasses. I think that's kind of the dream, and that's kind of where things are headed.
Nice. That's a really good explanation that I would not have been able to give. That's why you're here.
I've been rehearsing in the bathroom mirror all morning.
Well, it was worth it. So I do have a question though. So what tools and software is required to get started? And do you need to learn how to code to make AR things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And like so many of these technologies, it can go a lot of different ways. Certainly, if you were going to like build an app from scratch that provided AR, experiences, yes, you would either have to code or you'd have to work with people who know how to code. However, there are a number of what they call low code or no code platforms that allow people to start using and experimenting with AR right now, even if you don't have that level of technical expertise. And I think that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, ways that you can do that, ways that are kind of quick and efficient to dip your toe in the AR lake.
Nice. Cool. Well, I think one thing that I want to talk about now, just to kind of ground this in like valuable practical information and how it can be applied, because a lot of times people hear about this stuff and they go, oh, that's cool, but like what can you actually do with it in real life versus just do it for funsies. So we're going to talk about how AR is being used in L&D already and what do we think are the best applications. So the first one that I'll cover, it sounds like it'll be boring, but with AR maybe it's not going to be so boring anymore. I'm talking about onboarding. So yeah, onboarding can be dry and it's something that you kind of have to do to get, your new people up to speed. But that's why we think at least that AR is the perfect solution to spice things up. And imagine you're a new hire and you're either using your device or in the future, those fancy glasses. And instead of having to, ask where the bathroom is when you're on site, there's arrows, overlaid on the map and you can see things like that. Not that the bathroom is the most important part of onboarding, but honestly, when I'm going through something that's something that
It's not important.
It's not important. Plus, it can help you have a well-structured onboarding process that can, I would imagine it reduces employee turnover. And it makes new hires feel confident in their roles and understand companies' expectations, but in a way that's memorable. Like especially, I would even imagine that there's ways to do it for remote workers too, right? Like, okay, here's we've sent you materials and they could scan a QR code on like an onboarding package that they've gotten. It's just a way to, I would say, keep things organized, structured, and also, getting into their core memories, I think.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of interest in AR for a number of things in L&D, onboarding in particular. I always want to preface this by pointing out that myself and certainly a lot of the people that I work with, we don't look at these XR technologies as like some silver bullet that it's like, if you just do this, like it's going to solve all your problems and you can move all your curriculum onto these devices. I don't look at it that way. I see it more as an augment to, like you said, spice things up, to engage people, to increase interactivity, and then hopefully as a matter of all that, really, really kind of take the information they're getting and make sure that it lives in their brain longer. And that seems to be what the studies show. It's just like that level of interactivity. That's just something that maybe, you might learn two things the same using XR as you would using a manual, but maybe it sticks with you longer if it's been a part of this interactive experience.
And also, you can have that physical part where you can just walk around, get out of the office chair, walk around the different levels in the building, and it's just,
right.
Yeah, get the blood flowing. So there are other ways to learn without having to sit in the same spot.
Yeah, exactly. And so on onboarding specifically, you can use it if, as you were saying, Andre, you just want to move people through the space and get them familiar with it, like this is where the conference room is, this is where the bathroom is, this is where, the all-important vending machine is. If you just want to get people on their feet and learning where they need to go, or maybe the places where they're not supposed to go, that's one thing that you can do. You're also able to kind of like create virtual hosts. And maybe that would be stakeholders who are otherwise difficult to schedule, who can't be there, like kind of greeting people or kind of giving their take on the onboarding process every time somebody new comes. But you can create a virtual version of that, or just do a deep dive on the company's culture. And the things that are kind of most important to people by touring the building and getting little bits of the company's history and kind of what they expect of you and what they expect of each other.
Yeah, and I think you had a sample that you could show us, right? Of something related, or not yet?
Yes, I do. I have a number of samples. I'm like the world's worst sharer, so everybody like, buckle in. Hopefully this will go
Oh, I
smoothly.
don't think you are, because I always press the wrong things no matter what. So you're in good company.
So yeah, so what I'm going to show right now is it's a little demo, very high level. This isn't really like a how-to. This is I think what we're talking about is a little bit more conceptual, but of a platform called WinTour, which is an AR tour platform that I've used before, have worked with that company. They're great people, and it's very intuitive. And the thing that I like about it, this is the platform that we used when we were at Training 2024 together with Elvis to do a quick down and dirty AR tour. And it's called a geo-tracked or geolocated AR tour. And all that is, that's a fancy way of saying, rather than going in and activating all of the AR interactions with an image track or like a QR code we're all familiar with, it's all based on the space. So it's like if you're going through the tour, it gives you little thumbnails showing like, oh, okay, this is the door to the office area, or this is the door to the parking garage. And when you see that and you get into that space, your proximity is what activates the event. And it's always kind of mapped to the same spot. And so I'm just going to show a quick video which kind of demonstrates how that happens. So here we go. All right, we seeing that?
Yep.
Okay, so basically, and I'm just going to talk everybody through it. What you see here is you find a spot. In this case, I'm using a stairway, and then you scan it, and those blue dots, those are all little points that kind of, they're like markers, so that the app is learning the geography, the look, the place that's supposed to activate all of this AR content when people are taking the tour. Once it's got enough information, it stops. And then you have the ability to add content. Now, in this case, I'm going to add video, but it could be a 3D model. It could be audio, it could be legacy video. And what's great about this is a green screen of an individual head to toe. But another cool thing about this app is it immediately does the keying for you. So this is kind of like what I was talking about before, creating a virtual host or a virtual individual who could either be guiding people through the onboarding using the same person, or it could be individuals who really want to speak to people. And then when you go through and take the tour, you would again find those spots, and boom, instantly you have this individual who's now speaking to you, delivering a message, and all that. I did this whole thing. Obviously, I sped it up for editing reasons and pacing because we don't want to watch like the whole thing, but I timed it. The whole thing together took 7 minutes. So again, we're not talking about like, this is lengthy development period, and it was just using basically standard green screen video to create that virtual host. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I think from watching that, I kind of saw what's possible, but I want to hear you explain it, of how people can start implementing this without dropping a bunch of time, money, like commitment to just try it out.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, just, since I'm not here to shill any one platform, there are a lot of different platforms where you can do, basically the same thing. They have different kind of ins and outs and how they work. ZapWorks is one, Blip AR, Plug XR. There's really a lot of them now. But as we've talked about before, a lot of times, budgets are tight. And especially if you're trying something new, if you're experimenting with a new technology, you don't want to, nor should you, dump a lot of money into it until you've really had a chance to play with it, see how people are interacting with it, and if it works properly for you. So one of the things that we often recommend or say that people can do to keep that part under control is use legacy assets that they already have. So, for example, I showed you a little bit of experimental or just they give you like bonus footage in Wintor for you to play around just to get familiar with things. But you could use video or animation or digital illustrations, posters that you already have that already support your current curriculum. And we can take that content and map it into space as a part of the tour. So you're not being dinged with the additional expense of creating something new. Now you can create something new. You can create something from scratch, and even you can include levels of interactivity that would involve, tapping to get different content, or what they call like proximity alerts, where things don't really activate until you get close to them. But just to begin, just to start experimenting, we do recommend that it makes sense to kind of like use an asset that you already have.
Yeah, and I remember we were talking recently and you mentioned these two things that wouldn't have a lot in common, but 7-Eleven and beekeeping. Tell me about those things and how they can relate, because those were I won't be able to explain it as well, but those seemed like some pretty cool use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. No. I mean, so kind of moving off of onboarding a little bit, that it's true that we've worked on some projects, or sorry, either worked on projects or heard people discuss other uses for AR. One in particular that I thought was brilliant. I know one of the L&D folks at 7-Eleven was explaining how, everything is money. Time is money. If you're working at 7-Eleven and the hot dog machine breaks and they can't get a repair person out there until the next day, the day after that, that's 48 hours worth of hot dog money that you don't have. And it's, if there's some way that problem can be solved there on site with somebody who's, just working a regular shift, that obviously is going to behoove them. So they have taken some of their basic machines, some of the machines that exist in every location, and fixed them with QR codes so that if, say, the machine stops working, an employee can go over, they've got a phone, you don't have to invest in a bunch of expensive headgear or equipment, and they get like an AR message, an AR kind of walkthrough on what the top 3 most common things that might cause the hot dog machine to stop spinning. So suddenly the person who's already there is able to maybe get in, fix the problem, and then that's 2 days worth of lost revenue that they don't have to contend with. It's all taken care of. So on-demand information that really kind of requires you to be seeing the actual device or location that you're working on or working in. That's a thing that they're doing, and again, to me, just sounds brilliant. I don't know, you can probably think of 2 or 3 other use cases off the top of your head in using it that way. But then the other project we were working on, and this I thought was a particularly good use, was for training people, especially like people in urban environments who don't have access to, who don't necessarily have access to agricultural education, and yet maybe would find something like farming, or in our case, beekeeping, an interesting career opportunity. Obviously, we need bees. That's a thing that's, a real problem in the world. So what we did is create a series of interactions, of AR interactions, that trained people about some of the most important aspects of beekeeping, in particular, the PPE, the protection equipment that you have to wear. What does the queen bee look like? How do you handle the hives? And people were able to access that information, students, kind of again, with their own devices at different sort of like learning stations, and take all that information, and then it was paired with virtual reality, which I mentioned earlier is more immersive, and basically, get inside a gamified version of what it would be like to open up the hive, try to identify where the queen is, or basically just use some of the information that you've learned interacting with these AR interactions.
That's awesome. I want to do that one. Although, I mean, I'm scared. I'm not scared of bees, but I want to learn how to take care of them because I know they're important.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it was fun. Actually, that was one of the most fun shoots I've ever been on because we were there. We were at an actual bee farm. We had all the equipment. And yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking the first time you like open it up. You feel like I'm just gonna get swarmed. But it was yeah, it was really cool. It was a great project.
Nice. Well, we have a burning question from the chat for you.
Mm.
And it's related to the 7-Eleven example. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Okay, thank you. We can move on. All right. You're allowed to stay. If you had said yes, I would have immediately dropped you from the call. We would have taken over the rest of the thing.
Did I? So I earned some cred back after the sweet tarts answer?
Yes. You're
Okay.
you've averaged out so far. Okay.
Okay, good.
All right. Let's keep going. Parker, I think you're up.
Yeah, well, that's really a good use case there you shared, Russ. And I don't think I would put myself in the beekeeping category. I'd rather watch that instead of being part of it. But anyway, next phase of this discussion, we have Gen Z, we have millennials, and they are really coming into the workforce more and more, and they are leaders or future leaders. And they also, especially the Gen Zers, they were born with cell phones on their fingers. I mean, that's how native they are. But I think of my day back in the 80s, when I was learning how to deliver training in the classroom with overhead projector slides. And, people would prefer that over reading textbooks. And as we got into the 90s, we had PowerPoint being introduced. Whoa, PowerPoint. Well, let's do this instead of overhead slides. So we moved into PowerPoint. And then later, the internet part was growing and computer-based training, people preferred CBT over PowerPoint. And, we had tools like a Macromedia Director, there was Authorware, there was CBT Express, there was different platforms out there back then that we could generate courses on CDs. So the preferences for technology changed over the years, and we got into WBT into the 2000s. And, we now have the introduction of social media, so the preferences keep changing. And now, with our young audience, growing into the leadership roles, I think AR is probably one of the things that, they would lean to. Like I have 4 kids and they're all Gen Zers, and I watched them as they grew up. They had preferences to learn from YouTube. They had Instagram and TikTok. I mean, there were different uses, but everything was on the phone. And it was amazing how much they did learn from the phone. Now with AR, the study that we pulled up, we found it's kind of interesting that Gen Z is 71% more likely to use AR compared to older generation. So that's a really good data point for all of you out there listening to this. Think about strategies. How do you attract and retain the younger audience? Because that's something they would like to see more of. So, with this knowledge in mind, we have mobile devices right there. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's after the mobile device? I mean, we talked a little bit about the glasses, and could you share more about, I think it's Meta, right? Meta glasses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I mean, I just want to say you're absolutely right. I mean, anecdotally, many times when we're having this conversation with people, whether or not they want to try and implement some sort of XR technology, that topic comes up. The idea that we need to be able to engage and impress, basically the Pokemon Go generation, and obviously being kind of trained up on games like that. The technology is a lot less foreign. It's more accessible. People like it. And again, that ability to interact with the content, digital content in the real world, is becoming something that's, yeah, people are raised on, and it's normal, and find it more interesting if they're getting content served up in that way. So that definitely comes up. And this is, my pitch to people has been, I mean, over the past couple of years, that again, if you're interested in this and you feel like it's worth experimenting and seeing if there's ways that your current curriculum or curriculum that you're about to develop can be supported by this technology, there are ways to get in and start prototyping and playing with it. And you don't have to buy a bunch of headsets. Most of it is accessible on any modern cell phone. So people, as you say, can get out there, interact with the content right away. But then I always end that argument with, and it's all the more reason to do that now, because in my opinion, within the next couple of years, when this becomes a hands-free experience and they really do perfect the sort of glasses version, the glasses iteration of augmented reality, well, then it's going to be a complete game changer. And if you've been investing time and R&D in trying to make this stuff work for you now in a phone-based or an iPad-based or, sort of way, then you're ahead of the game when these experiences go hand-free. And then just, a few weeks ago, at Meta, they announced Orion, their very sophisticated glasses version of an AR delivery mechanism. And not to get too nerdy, my understanding from people I've talked to and the reporting that I've read, they've been working on this for like 10 years. This is their big bet. They want to be, either the player or among the players who perfect this technology so that they're not, they're no longer beholden to Android phones or iOS, Mac devices. And so they weren't there. They didn't make this year as an actual product launch. I believe the reporting is famously each unit costs something like $10,000 to make now, which is obviously not accessible to not to regular people and not even businesses at scale. So all that said, the demonstrations were apparently very impressive. This is the kind of thing that is going to allow people to do this sort of, or consume this sort of information without being bound by having to use their phone or holding up something between themselves and this information. And the experience is really compelling. And again, from what I have read, they are targeting sometime in maybe 2027 as when they really, really want to have an affordable, marketable product that's, out there in the real world that people can buy. And once that happens, I think that you'll see this stuff really explode. And if they've got something that's that technologically advanced at this point, I have to believe that there are other companies who aren't willing to just cede this territory to Meta. They've probably got versions of their own that maybe they're a little behind, maybe they're close, maybe the other companies are just playing it close to the vest, an Apple, what have you. But this is coming, and it's going to be in a form factor that is a little less cumbersome. And I think that's going to happen sooner than later, and it's going to be a really big deal.
Yeah, it's a good point that you're making about preparing yourself for that event when the glasses come out. So even though we have mobile devices today, now is a good time to start building, to get the practice of it, understand that the instructional design principles behind it, development timelines, and the cost and things like that. So that's, I think, what I'm hearing from you, right, is prepare now so that you're ready for the future.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I think it makes sense to kind of engage with this.
I have another question that I got a text from a friend. This is definitely not my question, but someone was asking me to ask this. What if one wants to see Vincent D'Onofrio standing in their living room? Is this possible with AR?
Well, it all depends on whether you're talking Full Metal Jacket Vincent D'Onofrio or, Kingpin Vincent D'Onofrio. They all come at different price points.
What about Law and Order Criminal Intent Vincent D'Onofrio?
I think you can get that at a discount. Yeah.
Even better.
I mean,
I'll tell them. I'm going to text him back right now and I'll tell them.
Yeah, we'll talk offline.
Okay.
We'll probably put something together.
Okay. Well, I think though that maybe even better than Vincent D'Onofrio, I think that there's something that we are about to share with our audience of somebody.
Well, let me if we have time, yeah, there's two additional things I wanted to show and share that I think we talked about. Now, the Wintour app, as I discussed, that's triggered through geo-tracking, but there's lots of different ways to do this. And there are even simpler ways to start prototyping. Again, like we were talking about, Parker, if you just want to get in there and start experimenting, one such example is using a platform called Adobe Aero. And I bring that up because a lot of people already are familiar with Adobe. They use Adobe. They have Adobe Creative Cloud. They're using Premiere. They're using Photoshop or Illustrator. But Adobe Aero is kind of their sort of baby steps into the AR world. So anybody who's already using that platform can go and create something in Aero, and they'll get they can map that to a QR code, which they can then share with other people. And then even if you haven't downloaded a specific app, like with Wintour, you have to be using the Wintour app to see a Wintour tour. But with this Aero functionality that they call like an applet, if people scan the QR code, and we've got a QR code we're going to share as a part of all of our shares. If you just scan that, it installs this little applet and allows you to see an AR experience right then and there. So without any investment beyond, the Creative Cloud that you might already be using, you can start taking video, 3D models, audio, and creating little mini tours or experiments that people can consume using their phones without having to install anything special. So I'm thinking that we're going to share both. We're going to share that at the end, and then something else. Do we have time to talk about how that ghost was created?
Yeah. Oh, I think we have plenty of time.
Yeah, I think
There's
so.
one question that came through a little bit ago that I think you kind of already answered. But so let's say a client wants to create an onboarding experience using the Wintour app. Like, what's the cost there? Is it like a licensing cost? What determines the price?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. They're all a little different, but by and large, you're paying like a monthly platform fee, the thing that modulates, and that can go anywhere from, depending on the platform, to $20 a month to probably, somewhere between $250 and $300 a month. The things that modulate the price or make it go up or down, how many people are able to view it, how much space you're allowed, because basically a lot of what you're paying for is somebody hosting your content in the cloud so that when somebody goes to access it, either by geolocation or image track or QR code, what have you, it's got to come from somewhere. So that price is giving you access to the tools, storing your information, often providing additional functionality for monetizing what you're doing. All of those are things that kind of impact the price. But you can get started almost on any of them on a free tier that's like, hey, you get 3 interactions and you can't use it to make money, but you can start playing right now and you can start learning right now. For $250, $300 a month, you can make a fully commercial product and deploy it in your business. And they'll host the content and help you with the tools to make sure that everything has been set up properly. So that's and then of course, as we were talking about before, you can build something from scratch. That's where things can get, I think, especially costly.
Yeah, these price points are really helpful to know, because I know for all of you decision makers out there watching this session today, I know you have a budget to think about as to how you want to allocate your money. One of the things that we traditionally do today is go to a default storyline arise type of course. Now, if you were to outsource a vendor to do that, that could range from a few thousand to $50,000 per hour of instruction. Whereas if you look at the cost of AR, and it's very target specific for onboarding or looking at machines in a 3D world, things like that, it may be a lot less. to go that route and more engaging and more interactive. So those are things that as a leader, you would look at, the cost of having somebody sit at a PC or looking at a large monitor and just going through a page turning type of storyline course, or do you get them moving around the facility and it takes less time and it's more engaging. So those are the things we want to point out to you so that you can make more informed decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up another great point that, once you have kind of created the interaction, it's relatively easy to then switch out the digital information. Whereas imagine a world in which you're trying to get people, you're trying to impact behavior, and you've got a bunch of posters up everywhere. And then suddenly either the messaging changes or the style guide changes, or, there's some alteration to that. And it's like, well, all of those are useless now. You've got to get them redone, reprinted, same for a manual. With the digital information, all you have to do is amend the digital file and then replace it within, the structure you've already created. For a long time at AMP, we had like digital business cards. Our cards were basically just a QR code scan, essentially. So anytime someone's title changed or phone number changed or, anything like that, you're just changing it on the back end and not changing it in the physical world, which can be, it can be a savings.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we have some other questions, but we have plenty of time, I think, for you to share some stuff. And we'll save maybe the last, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so. If we go a little bit late, sorry people, but we're not on anybody's time clock or whatever it is. But I say go for it. Share what you want to share, and then we'll tackle some of the questions.
Yeah, well, let me just I'll share something quickly, and then we'll get into questions. But so this is the other component. I mean, I almost hesitate to bring AI into the conversation because that's such a big thing, and scary to some, exciting to others. But my point only being, again, especially if you're coming at this and dollars are tight and you just kind of want to be in experimental mode and you're not really ready to put a lot of money into it, there are AI tools that allow you to create content pretty quickly, pretty dynamically, to experiment with and see, hey, is this something that maybe is going to be good for me? So again, I'm going to share my screen. The AR experience we're going to be sharing in a bit was created using a product called Runway. And I can just show you briefly how that would look. So like many other platforms, you're able to prompt. I put in a prompt like for scary ghost. Go here, and it thinks about it for a minute, and then boom, we've got some options for scary ghosts.
Those are scary. Those I can
and I said emphasize it's got to be scary. It can't be like Casper ghosts. It can't be like silly ghosts. So you're then able to take those elements and bring them into their sort of video generation tool, and by repositioning the ghosts, in this case, I took one, made him far away in the corner. That sort of, in essence, becomes your first keyframe. And then take a second and move them closer to the camera. That, in essence, becomes like your second keyframe. And then you have it generate. And you can see here.
The ghost has full hands. There's full-on hands on that ghost.
Oh yeah, it's a creepy one. And now once it's done, you can see you've created this animation. And again, this whole process took no more than 10 minutes.
Wow.
So if you wanted to go and start playing around and seeing what was, doable, you have all these ways to kind of get at that. And we'll be sharing something a little later to show people the actual final product here in a bit. But just want to share that because, again, I know if you're just in the experimentation phase, that also means you don't necessarily want to hire somebody to do an animation or to do a fully realized, fully rendered interaction. These are ways that you can get in there and start playing around.
Yeah, and I think that actually answered one of the questions, which was how can I play with AR as a freelance instructional designer and add it to my portfolio? So you've talked about the technical part of playing around with it. I can talk a little bit about the instructional design, like portfolio part. I guess what I would do And what I have done is like take an existing project type that I've worked on and then imagine, hey, what would be something that could be, you know, an additional item that I could have made for this project that I've already done, and then just develop it. I think, Parker, you probably have some things to add about like manufacturing and all of that, like some examples that you get excited about.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, I can definitely see automobile factory, jet engine factory, and the process of raw materials to finished parts. There's just so much to learn, and especially those that are in Six Sigma, lean manufacturing. You know, there are many steps in the process, and just having the ability to walk through in a three-dimensional visual way on a phone, mind-blowing.
Yeah, or even what I've seen is so like even something like okay, so I used to work at the Orange County Library System in Florida, and one of the first classes that I made was Intro to AR, and it was using an app that I don't think exists anymore called Erasma, and you could take any image and upload it, and you could use your camera on your phone to recognize it. So you could like, it could be a drawing that someone made, or it could be a document. So I imagine that if you're doing instructional design, even something like, hey, here's a placard that is at the side of a machine, or it's maybe something that's in a document or a form that somebody who's an employee has to fill out all the time. Perhaps the app could recognize that document and then have little pop-ups that give extra information about common problems filling out the form. So those are just some ideas off the top of my head. But Russell, does this check out? I'm not an expert, but I made this up just now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to me, that it's completely in the spirit of what we've been talking about. You know, just try it and see. There's not really a right or wrong yet. And we're not suggesting that, you know, you take all of your coursework or everything that you're training and make it AR. That doesn't make sense. But there are ways that you can find to support what your learning objectives that already exist, or your coursework that already exists, with some of the assets that maybe you've already built, and start to see where you get some benefit. Because again, by the time this goes completely hands-free, I think it's going to become a really, really common component of any sort of training setup. That's
Yeah,
my
and
thought.
to your point, Russ, about if AR is not the end all for, you know, for everything that we do in training. But what I do like about it is that it just gives another facet of learning. And you know, people have different preferences, but the more multifaceted that your learning program is, the more ways you can deliver, the more enrichment you provide for the learning process. Now, we all learn the same way from a human biological perspective, but the way that we receive learning or receive input in a multifaceted way is important. So introducing AR is just a strategy to add more facets to learning.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, one interesting question that came in was, do you think AR will have a wider appeal than VR?
Yeah, I have to say yes, and I don't think that's an especially hot take, and I'll tell you why, for two reasons. One, again, you're not forced into the position of having to buy or expect someone to have expensive, you know, head-mounted display equipment. I mean, even at its cheapest, I mean, the MetaQuest 3 is probably one of the best VR devices out there, and it's still $300 or $400. So it's not like a company's going to go out and, like, you know, drop $300 or $400 to, like, you know, train even 10 people at a time, nor are people necessarily going to have them, you know, on their own. And that technology is like changing so fast, it doesn't even necessarily make sense as an investment. So you've already got something that people can do using their phones. So that's one thing that's better. And two, even at its best, the VR experience, the user experience, it's a little clunky. I mean, it's sometimes difficult to get people onboarded to it, and some people just have kind of an innate distaste for it, or it doesn't, I mean, it just doesn't sit well with them. You know, makes them kind of feel sick to the stomach. So I think the potential for AR is greater. Now, are there situations where learning in VR could be amazing? Absolutely. I know people are using them for simulations in such a way that it's apparently very, very useful and impactful. But I think that AR at the end of the day will have a wider impact. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. We've got, oh man, we've got lots of questions here. Okay, let's see here. So One of the questions is, and I think it's already answered sort of in context clues by now. I think this was asked and we accidentally answered it. Is using this software to create a learning experience something that can be done with rapid authoring techniques? So like quick kind of getting things out there. I think you just showed us that. Of course, you
Yeah,
have to tweak it, but you can generate some things.
I mean, I go to Adobe Aero just because I've used it, but I know there are other companies that allow for that sort of, quick prototyping as well. But that's what I would recommend to anybody use, especially if you're already a creative professional and you've got Creative Cloud, you're using Illustrator, you're using Photoshop. It's just there waiting for you to use, and it can um, interact with some of those programs as well to get the assets that you've created into Aero and starting to see how that works for you.
Cool. Next one. Do you know if AR is still accessible in terms of like accessibility and all of that? I'm sure there are
Yeah, that's
design principles,
a
right?
great question, and you may not have noticed, but the AR virtual guide that I showed there at the very beginning was subtitled. So you absolutely can add accessibility features to AR experiences. In my opinion, a little bit easier than for VR. We've often run up against that problem in VR because since you could be looking literally all 360 degrees around you, making sure that certain accessibility features were always available was a bit tricky, or could be a bit tricky. Not impossible, but tricky. So yes, I think that those considerations can and should be incorporated into using this.
Yeah, and I'm sure over time there'll be, official guidance and best practices and all of that of all the, ways that the authoring apps can be improved in that way. And yeah, I like though that society is hopefully in the way that like that's an upfront concern. Like that's a thing immediately that's just as baked into everything now as it should be. Okay, next question. And this will be interesting. Parker, I'm interested to hear your answer to this as well. What are some specific new considerations that IDs might need to take into account when designing AR? Well, accessibility was one.
What you want to start with, Russ? Or
Yeah, well, sure.
Well, I mean, I defer to y'all more in terms of the work of the ID. I mean, I think that accessibility, yes. You know, yeah, that one I have to say I'd be curious to hear your take, Parker.
yeah, well, from a design perspective, I think it will depend on what you're trying to achieve with that particular topic. So, for instance, I used to work in the jet engine industry. I worked as a trainer. I went out to the tarmac at various airports around the world. I had a class of people who were maintenance technicians, and we'd go out and we'd open up the cowl and look at the engine. And I can see situations where if they're in a Gen FAM, which is short for general familiarization, if they're in a Gen FAM situation and everybody had their phone, we just wanted to get everybody acquainted with the various components on the external of the engine. They can hold the phone, walk around, and go at their pace. Sometimes it's very noisy outside. So if you have a phone and you have the label on the phone, this is a 2.5 bleed. This is the high compressor section. This is the borescope plug for this. You can have that phone label. You don't have to worry about the sound because you're wearing headphones. Try to minimize damage to your ears. But you're out there, but you're learning at your pace. And then you can use that as a stepping stone for the next part of the training, which may be indoors, or it might be something else like a remove and replace procedure, things like that. But there's a particular use for AR that would make sense. You know what, like Russ said earlier, you don't want to use AR for everything, but you think about the task at hand. Does it make sense to have something that you could use the phone for? So those are things I would consider inside a facility. you know, if it is a manufacturing floor plan that you're looking at, and you want to have people onboarded to understand better how are the raw materials received and what are the things that they have to go through in order to get the finished goods outside the factory out to the customer. So you could do a traditional factory tour, but I remember my tour days when I was talking to you know, group tour leaders, and I'd be like, you know, I heard some of what you said, but it was just so loud out there. I couldn't catch everything what you said. So it depends on the environment. And so having this AR tool, use it whenever you want. You don't have to be a part of a group. You could just go when you have the time. So I could see multiple ways to use a tool like this for from a design perspective. So
Yeah.
Russ, you look like you're about to say something.
Well, no, I just, something you said made me remember a very specific consideration. So I'm glad you sort of jogged my memory. Again, it was moving fairly quickly. So I don't know if you would have seen when I was showing the wind tour example, that when you start the tour, the first thing that comes up is a little warning saying, hey, you know, you're looking at the AR experience, but you're in the real world. Remain cognitive of everything around you. And that is really something that you have to design for specifically. You don't want, you know, people wandering into the middle of the street or you know, in front of a tractor while they're doing that. You need to be very mindful. I mean, we've actually done a lot of work with like EHS departments, and we talked about using this sometimes, but while it's not hands-free, it's like if somebody's just staring through their phone and they walk into a loading zone, that could potentially create a danger. So yes, you need to kind of really pick the places where it's going to be both effective and safe until such a time that it can be so hands-free that you're not losing any of the visibility that you would during a normal situation and be
Yeah,
safe.
and fortunately today, the H&S practices have elevated where they have defined walkways that are safe pathways, and anything beyond a yellow line, for instance, on the floor, you don't cross over because, you know, of risk of getting injured.
Right, but you want to make sure you're not looking at this while you're walking over the
Exactly, yeah,
yellow line.
yeah,
Yeah.
And also watch for the forklifts that are coming down.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, one of the things that I saw in the comments actually that I thought was a good point, and they said it better than I was going to try to say it, is so this Tim Reed, we have you in the comments saying, I think performance support is one of the most applicable and sensible areas to use it. I can even see it being a teaching mechanism for performing a task. As someone is onboarding, they use the AR to learn the how and why. Then for less frequent tasks or more complex ones, information is available to the worker via AR, which I think that makes sense. And one of the things that we kind of have to keep in mind too is no matter the platform, you know, good instructional design is good instructional design. So keeping in mind the colors and the placement of graphics and like the space, it's kind of, you know, you're thinking about more space, but at the end of the day, if you're a great instructional designer in other parts, you can like take those principles with you to this platform too. So that's kind of fun. It kind of makes it less intimidating, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Well, I think we've got enough time for your final.
Okay, well,
Yes.
yes. So I have one QR code. I don't have the second one. So last thing, just to tee this up, I think we'll be sharing two QR codes. One is to the ghost experience that you saw, and I can share that now. And you can either take a screenshot or what have you, or maybe it'll be added in the chat at the end as well. But that's going to give you that one Adobe Aero experience. The last thing, there are, again, so many different ways you can kind of experiment with this world and get access to AR. There's a cool program, a cool app called Volograms, which was basically like a phone-based volumetric video capture. So it like basically creates a hologram. And you can do that. They will let you go and create what they call a Vologram message, which is just like 6 seconds, a real quickie, for free. You can go do that tomorrow. And then they'll send you a QR code that anybody can use, and it's going to bring up that hologram of you delivering your message, and you can add things. You can like add extra 3D, you can add a link to your website, And, the idea is if you see the value in that, or you say you want to send a message to somebody that way, or even create greetings or what have you at your business, they can then sell you upgraded like links, like a 30-second message, a minute-long message, more additional interactivity. But we're sharing that just as kind of a reminder that what we did here today, and thank you for coming, and so on and so forth. So how should we do this? Should I share the first one first, or are they both going to go in the thread?
We've got a plan here. We thought about this, So right now we're going to show the ghost QR code, and then after we're going to show the second one, the hologram one. So yes, let's share the ghost one.
I think it must have disappeared like a ghost, right?
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
See that?
There we go. Don't get too scared, everybody.
And turn up your volume.
Oh, I don't think I had the volume on when I did this one. Now I'm gonna have to do it again. Awesome. Cool. And
Okay.
then soon after, we will be sharing that second QR code in our LinkedIn feed. So sorry, it's like a little trail where you gotta go. Now you gotta go to our LinkedIn feed because we're gonna show you the second exciting one where Russell Johnson may or may not be in your personal space, but in a safe way. Anyway, okay, so here we go. Any final words? I don't think we have any more questions, but any final words?
Nothing other than, again, thank you guys so much for setting this up and inviting me to talk about this. I could prattle on tunelessly for hours, as you all know, about this kind of thing. So obviously, if yes, people have questions or even just wanna have a conversation with all of us further about how maybe this could be deployed, or like, maybe I've got a project that this might be effective. Obviously, we're more than happy to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually. Oh, go ahead, Parker.
Oh, I was just going to say, thank you, Russ, for sharing your expertise. It's been a phenomenal learning experience for me, just to kind of hear more about the technology, where it's going in the future. And I especially want to give thanks on behalf of Andrea and me to all the viewers out there. And we thank you for coming. We hope to have more sessions like this, just because we want to, improve our trade and always be on the lookout for future stuff that's coming down the pipe. So go ahead, Andrea. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that if you want to hang out with us more, we are offering sort of free hour-long planning sessions with us and Russ. I'm gonna say, yeah, let's call it that. So if you want to learn more about incorporating AR into your L&D plans, and there will be a link in the chat that you can book a free consultation, and be on the lookout for that second QR code. But thanks everyone. Hope to hear from you.